A staple of growing up in Ireland in the 80s and 90s was the Honda Civic. Famously, and more often, a hatchback, a car that was equally driven by grannies and boy racers alike. And obviously, like a lot of us, the Civic has grown up. It's less of a granny car, it's also less of a boy racer car. So what is the Civic in 2023? Well, today on Nobby on Cars, we're going to find out. One thing that is definitely true about the car over the last few years is it has grown in price. This car, including delivery, is not going to give you much change at a €50,000, and that's not what the Civic was originally about, certainly in price point. And the Civic is now a 2-litre self-charging hybrid, 184 brake horsepower, but really fuel efficient. And is it still as sharp to drive as Civics of the past? I think looks wise, it's a pretty good looking car. Still has a sharp angle on the front of the bonnet over the nose. It's got reasonably sized alloy wheels. They're not massive. It's still very low slung. You know, you've got a low roof line over the back, the way it slopes down towards the rear of the car. A little bit of contrast with a black side skirt on it. Bits of chrome, which a lot of people don't like chrome, but kind of manages to work, although this black part in the B-pillar would equally work just as well. They're 18-inch alloys. They don't look too small, they don't look too big, if you get me. You can really appreciate the low slung nature of the design of the car now here from this angle. The boot spoiler is integrated into the body of the car. It's very subtle. Overall, I think it actually looks really smart. Does this design of the car, it's a manually lifting tailgate by the way, does it create a bigger boot environment? I think the answer to that is yes. So you have this parcel shelf that goes left to right that is flexible and you can just hook it in very easily. It's kind of like a blind in your house, if you get me. And that's a pretty decent boot. There's a huge opening in it. Not much going on underneath. You can't drop the floor or anything like that. Couple of shopping hooks. I think that's definitely a pro for the Civic compared to past designs which may have created just a bit more of a narrow opening or whatever, but it's working for me. Not a massively heavy boot, but again for the price, would it have killed them to put in an electric opening tailgate. Getting in and out of the Civic, it's not that difficult, but space is a little bit tight in the back. Now, it's not beyond use. I'm not beyond 5'10", and that's my seating position, and I'm still okay with a bit of space there for knee room. Certainly space for feet. And head height, it's a little bit compromised, so that lovely roof design eats in here a bit. Now, if you do sit back into your seat, there's kind of a cutout, a little bit more space there going on. Glass roof affords you a nice bit of light. What is a bit evident as well is that it's perhaps a little bit backwards, is both charging points are USB-A, where most cars these days are now migrating to USB-C. We still have an armrest, which is welcome, although it's very low down. You'd be like this trying to lean on it. And it's kind of more of a two-seater. You've got a hump in the floor, and that middle seat is quite small. But for two people in the back, it's going to be lovely. And your view up front of the controls, well, that is lovely because it looks really smart. Interestingly, I think in here up front is where the Civic is going to make a show of a lot of other cars in the market today. If you want physical knobs for climate control, you're getting them. For volume, you're getting them. Yes, there is just over a 10-inch touchscreen that has wireless Apple CarPlay and nav that isn't guided by Google or anything like that. You can see the power flow of the car. When you look around you, it's physical buttons. I love the fact that the wireless charger, because that's the main place you want to put your phone, even if your phone doesn't need to be charged, but you can press it on and off, so you can leave your phone there and it doesn't have to be charging, ruining your battery all the time. The fit and finish is lovely. I mean, it's plastic, but it's really good quality. It's crystal clear displays. The gear selectors are just down here. They're just buttons, just to keep, space free. You've got paddles at the back of the steering, should you want to do that. You've got heated seats and heated steering wheel. Missing a head-up display might be a nice touch. There's a Bose sound system in this car. It's when you sit into this, you realise how much you've missed just physical stuff and things that are easy to find, and a back button that just does its job. You know, why can't more cars be like this? And it's fantastically efficient, and I'll cover that now as we go for a drive. A lot of the time this car is in EV mode, even at motorway speeds, which I'm doing now. If you really need a bit of extra power, you'll see that EV mode disappear, but generally it's operating within the parameters of the self-charging battery. And some people, you know, are quite negative about self-charging setups because it's like, you know, just, you know, there's no such thing. I'd look at it this way: it works in tandem with the petrol engine. It always means that there's a bit of power there should you need it for acceleration or whatever. And then in city centre driving, you are driving in silence, you're driving in really smooth power outputs. It's still a relaxing way to drive a car, not to be confused in any way with an electric vehicle. Another way it benefits the Civic is no matter how I change how I drive this car, it is doing 5.5 litres per 100 kilometres all day long. Won't budge, that's just what it's doing, which is great. A car with not far off 200 brake horsepower that is purely petrol, doing that sort of fuel economy, nothing wrong with it whatsoever. As you look around you, you're surrounded by safety aids, whether that's blind spot, frontal collision mitigation, rear collision mitigation, under 10 kilometers an hour at least anyway for the rear. If somebody was to go past you as you're reversing, the car will apply the brakes basically and give you an audible warning of what's about to happen. Yes, with this style of engine setup and this style of gearbox, if you go under hard acceleration for an extended amount of time, it can sound a little bit rough, but to be honest with you, and I've just gone from sort of 80 to 100 kilometers there, it does it with enough battery acceleration that you don't need to floor this car. There's always ample power there. One thing that is evident at this type of speed is there's quite a lot of noise into the cabin of the car, and quite a lot of noise from the outside world as cars go by it. So that's certainly noticeable now if you crank up the radio or whatever, but can't do that right now. Sometimes trying to get the power down in slippy road conditions and in the wet can be a little bit difficult, so you might find the wheels slipping as you're trying to exit a junction, and even sometimes under hard acceleration at 50 and 60, 70 kilometers an hour, you'll still feel a little bit of traction trying to hold on. I love the seating position, it's nice and low. That essence of the Civic hasn't been lost. You know, you really are squatted down. It's a good driving seating position. The steering wheel feels great in your hand. The instruments are clear. You know, if you want to crank up the volume, you've got a knob there for doing that. Equally, if you're too hot or too cold, it's just a quick switch of that while you're driving. In fact, you don't even really need to take your eyes off the road to do it. And that's the thing that a lot of people are just crying out for. I really put it into some corners over the time I've had the car, and it's really when you're pushing it right to the limit that you'll feel it just try and start to lose grip. But by and large, it's still a rewarding car to drive. The Civic was always, you know, a driver's car, and maybe, you know, the lack of a manual gearbox and this slightly, I wouldn't say weird, just different combination, not what we're used to in a Civic, that revved and revved. I mean, that's probably missing from the car, and maybe that gives people a sense that it doesn't drive as it once did, perhaps. It's still very much a comfortable cruiser. You've got enough safety aids to keep you where you want to be, radar, cruise control. You know, you can just sit into this car, whack on your favourite podcasts, and let the car munch the miles for you. And the beauty of what I do is you're exposed to so many different cars, and it can take you 2 minutes to sit into a car and go, yeah, I like this. And you can, without even thinking, compare it to so many other vehicles. And that's the feeling I've managed to get from this Civic. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's perhaps not quite on the edge of driving dynamics as it used to be. You could argue maybe from some angles it's just blended into another car design, whereas maybe in the past the Civic really did stand out. It's still got something. It's got something special. And if you love driving and you want all the physical things that I've mentioned already in the video, that's where this car really stands out for me. I'd love a go of a Type R. I really would. If anybody's bought one, if you're one of those people of the 72 sold in Ireland, because it doesn't go into specifics of whether it's Type R or not, there's a bit of hard acceleration, but the engine still doesn't sound too bad. Whereas, for example, a Lexus, it will be screaming a little bit more. Now here I am at 40 kilometers an hour, and it's just calm, it's quiet, it's smooth. The difference between petrol and hybrids, you would notice it. Yes, it's giving me audible warnings for blind spot there, just in case I wasn't aware there's a car behind me. So the situational awareness of the car is very, very good. And if on occasion a little blast takes your fancy, the gear changes are so quick, the brakes are good, you're quickly at motorway speeds and beyond. So it's still very much an enjoyable car for me. I've enjoyed my time with it, and yeah, for me the Civic is very much still alive. Perhaps its biggest drawback that's putting people off is just the price, but for me, it's still a cracking car. It's fair to say that if you read enough on the internet, Honda nearly considered pulling out of Europe after Brexit. They were just quick to shut down factories that weren't going to work for them anymore. And that really would have been a big shame. In 2023, they've sold just over 70 Civics in Ireland, a car that probably would have done a lot better in the past. And you have to ask yourself, what are the reasons for that? Is it price? Perhaps. Is it the fact that Honda don't exactly seem to be shouting about the Civic? Maybe. Is it the fact that, Europe, never mind Ireland, just isn't a big priority for Honda? They're massive in the Far East. They're massive in America. They don't need little old Ireland. But having driven this car and spent just 24 hours with it, it reminds me in some ways of the Lexus ES series. It just gets on with being a car. It looks smart. It's not particularly complicated to do things with. And yes, it's, touching on €50,000, which buys you a lot of car these days. But there's just something about it that I really, really like. And if you've always liked Hondas, and maybe the Civic has just escaped your memory for whatever reason, and you're looking for something like this, I'd have a good look around. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.